getting started here in a second. We're just having some YouTube difficulties back here.
I like her. I like her little section.
I guess I could have done that.
Do you Okay, we are having some difficulties with YouTube, so I guess if you can hear us on the internet, but you can't see us, that's why.
Here it is.
No.
Joe, do you want to pray for us? And we can,
Sure.
maybe that'll help.
Might make it work.
No greater gift than the gift of time, Lord, and people coming and giving of their time to be here tonight, Lord, to hear of very important information, Lord, that we feel it is one of the most important things that we've heard in terms of the application directly into our own marriages to assist us in our own growth and development. And wherever you are in the midst, Lord, we know that all great things can occur. Please be here. Let you be honored in all things that we say and do. And please help us, Lord, with any of the audio-video equipment. We don't need it for anyone in here, per se, to hear it, but for those that have not been able to attend for whatever reason today out there in the internet world, please allow it to be received and used well for you and for your glory. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. So how are we doing there, sir?
Wow, yay.
God is good. Come on, give a hand clap. And Seb is good too, and Pastor. Thank you guys.
Seb.
I'm going to rail myself on this.
All right, well, thank you all for coming back. Is there anybody that wasn't here the last couple weeks that's new tonight?
Hey,
yay!
Look at you guys.
Our sound
Welcome
guy
back.
and gal. Yay, awesome. Okay, well, awesome. Well, thank you guys for bearing with us the last few weeks. Hopefully you found it enjoyable. So, quick pop quiz. Who did their homework? Raise your hand if you did your homework.
Who remembers what the homework was? Same people. Oh, wow. Anyways, that's amazing how that works.
All right, good. What's that? Good job.
All right.
Awesome. The homework was to decide who was going to be the hero and also to practice the cave time and the unloading of the purse. So awesome. All right, great. Well,
shout out for next week.
Oh yes. So if for those of you that maybe do not have a home church or not busy on Sunday, we're going to be having a wonderful production. It's an Easter-based production here.
Sunday.
This Sunday, not on Easter, this Sunday. It's going to be awesome. I know Jill and all the kids and adults have been working really hard. So if you're available, please definitely check that out, 10 o'clock here on Sunday. So, all right. So here we are, part 3 already. Awesome. So last week, we talked about the differences between men and women. And really, this is a continuation of last week, but we're going to take it to another level. Now, I have to say, last week was funny and entertaining. This week is probably going to be a little bit harder for some of us to swallow, to be honest with you. However, this will be the most life-changing one that we're going to do. I can guarantee that. But the thing is, you're going to have to really soften your heart. You're going to have to really introspect and take a look at yourself and be willing to really say, hey, is that me? Because the truth is, if you say, no, I don't think that's me, you're probably lying to yourself, okay? I'm just going to tell it to you straight, because this is really what brought our marriage to the next level. Because the bottom line is, what we're going to get into tonight pretty much affects every single person, probably at least in this country, because of the way that we're starting to mold our society. So we're going to kind of get into that in a little bit here. So what we're going to be talking about tonight is the secret to lasting passion, okay? The problem is that a lot of people settle for a mediocre marriage, just like we settle for mediocrity in many areas of our life, spiritually, you know, maybe in our careers. But the bottom line is there's nothing more important besides God than your marriage, okay? And we need to take this very seriously, because if you're doing it right, you're going to be married most likely for a very long time. And the example that you're setting is not only for yourself, it's for others, especially for your children, okay? And then your children's children. And I'm hoping that we're going to be changing future generations by doing this series, because I know what it was like. You know, growing up, I had awesome parents. I have an awesome, probably a better relationship with them now than I ever did. But a lot of what I saw was what drove me to want to make changes, okay? Because I saw that it just wasn't really the way that I wanted it to be. I wanted more. And Joe had the same experience. He wanted more, okay? But nothing in life worth having comes easy, okay? If you want a successful business, you're going to work your bottom off. If you want a successful relationship with God, you got to work at it. You want a successful relationship with your kids, you've got to work at it, okay? But you know, just like they say, you know, if you look at a person's checkbook register, you kind of see where their heart is and where their idols are, what's more important than God or anything else, because you can see where you're spending your money. But where are you putting your time? Your time needs to be put into the marriage, because it is the building block of everything that's important in your life. Now, you know, some people find other things maybe a little bit more important, but you shouldn't if you really are doing things that are going to be pleasing to God and that are really going to be long-lasting. I mean, the things of this world come and go, but like I said, at the end of your life, you're never going to sit back and wish you played more video games or wish that you sat on your cell phone longer. It's just not going to happen. You're going to wish that you had those connections.
One point, because as she was talking about, you know, changing generations and your kids, I thought about that, and I'm like thinking of the ages of my kids, and they're just getting a little bit older, but they're still kids. Your children, it doesn't matter if you're 70 or 80, or if you're 30 or 40, or if you haven't had kids yet, the impact that you are, wherever you're at in your relationship, and whatever age you are with your spouse, you will still have impact on your children. So they can learn at 30 or 40 or 50 from your relationship, no matter where they're at. So don't discount, say, oh, well, our kids are grown up. They still have relationships. They may be married themselves. So they will be watching and modeling you till the day that you die, I should say. So it's a very important thing to remember. It's not just about young kids. It's about all kids, and obviously even everybody that we would hope to role model.
Okay. All right. So first of all, we need to define what is passion, because if we want to give you a lasting passion, you need to know what passion really is. It's a strong enthusiasm or desire towards something, a fire in your soul. Okay? So I can't help, the Christian in me can't help but think about the passion of Christ. Okay, what did he do? He loved us so much that he died for us on the cross. I think that's quite a bit of fire in your soul for somebody, okay? And so that's exactly what he wants for our marriage, okay? He wants us to not only be passionate about him, but for our spouse as well. And so it makes sense that we need to make this a priority. Anybody know what this number is, 32,850? Anybody know what that number means? So I was shocked when I read this number, because this is how many days you'll live if you get to 90 years old. And when I looked at that number, I said, that doesn't seem high enough. It kind of scared me. Because I'm thinking, all right, if you had $1 for every year that you lived, you've had $32,850, how long would that get you? Okay, with paying for a mortgage and this and that, not very far. So that's not a lot of days. So what does that mean? That means you can't sit on your butt and just wait for this to happen. You have to do something, and you have to do it now. Okay? So if you really want this for your marriage, for your life, you've got to really make this a priority, and it has to be now. Because if not, it probably will never actually happen. So I'm not going to go through the whole story that we talked about the first day, because if you haven't seen it, you can watch it on YouTube. But I do want to tell you the part of our story that we sort of left out, or we might have at least alluded to, that's going to be in reference to today. Because, like I said, what we're going to teach today is really what drastically changed our marriage. Again, not like we had infidelity or anything like major, but we really didn't have the passionate relationship that I thought we should have, because from what I understood growing up, when you first got married, it was great, and then it went, south from there. It just got worse. But for me, I was like, oh, well, I mean, it was good, but it really wasn't like, woo, we were like, on a honeymoon forever, and actually we fought on our honeymoon.
We fought before our honeymoon, actually.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's not like, but we weren't fighting all the time, but it really just wasn't what I kind of thought it was going to be. It wasn't that, and again, I don't want to make it sound like it should be a fairy tale, because we don't believe in the Hollywood version of love, but I just thought we would be a little bit more excited about each other. They say, oh, when you first get married, you're physically intimate all the time. Really? I mean, once a week, every 2 weeks, whatever, didn't really matter, because we were really more friends and business partners than we really were like just on fire for each other. And so, but something didn't feel right. Even though it wasn't bad, it didn't feel right. And I have a feeling that a lot of you that are here have that same kind of gut check. It's kind of like, it's good, but I feel like it could be better, And it's good to want more, because that's how you actually improve. So anyway, so as we're going along, we realize, okay, there has to be something more to this. So we start searching, okay? And what we stumble upon is, stuff in the world like John Gray and Tony Robbins. So we decided to go to this Tony Robbins seminar. It's called Date with Destiny. Do you remember where that was? Was that the one in the Bahamas?
Was that in Jersey? Oh, wait, was that?
I just don't remember where it was. I think it might have been in the Bahamas.
Or Jersey.
One or the other. Anyway. But wherever it was, it's always awesome, because his stuff is always just amazing. And so we're at a part in the seminar, and it's not even a relationship seminar. It's actually just about creating the destiny, the life that you desire. But they had this relationship portion, and they made the husbands and wives separate. And I'm like, well, that's kind of weird.
Bahamas, she's right.
All right. And was that when you got food poisoning?
Yes, it was.
Oh, yeah, that was really bad.
I think somebody wasn't exactly happy with my participation in the event, maybe.
Anyway, so not a good ending, but it was a good middle part. Yes. So anyway, so we start talking about what we're going to talk about today. And Tony Robbins says, okay, out of curiosity, how many people in the audience feel this affects your marriage in some way? And now there's 5,000 people in this seminar. Every single hand went up. Now, I tell you this because when I tell you that I can pretty much guarantee it's affecting every single one of you, you'll see that I'm most likely right. Now, and let's just say maybe it's not you, maybe it's just your spouse. Highly doubt it, but it could be. All right, so that's basically kind of our story, and now you're going to understand how it actually works.
Real quick on that, think about that. Can anyone get anyone to agree on, of a population, can 60, 70, 80% of Anybody believe in anything the same? I mean, it's like, no, everybody fights. There's always 50-50, 65 to 40, 35, whatever the math is. Never do you ever see 100% of people agree on something when there's any large quantity of it. You're talking people of different races, people from all over the world, men, women, millionaires. There was a couple billionaires in the audience, people that probably owed $100 million. It didn't matter who was there. All of them agreed, without exception. So if that doesn't tell you something in itself, then, well, I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah. All right, so what's the secret to lasting passion in a marriage? We call it God's gift of polarity. So, Joe, since you did such a good job last week, we're going to have you demonstrate.
Her fingers stuck between this. This will hurt. Okay, it's actually hard to break apart when there's that strong of polarity. Okay? Really strong, remember that? Literally, you can't pull them apart.
So that's north and south.
All right, flip them over. No matter how hard you push, you literally can't push them together there.
Yes.
Okay?
All right, good. All right, so attraction toward a particular object, like magnets, and the extreme differences in men and women create sexual attraction. So when you have these differences, it creates that sexual attraction. So one thing that you have to understand, because I want you to realize this isn't a bunch of like voodoo stuff. Okay, this is really based off of biochemistry. And we have a doctor in the audience, I won't say whose, but he knows that what I'm saying is true. Men and women both have estrogen and they both have testosterone. The difference is women have more estrogen, men have more testosterone, okay? So with women who have, like we said, mostly estrogen, we're going to refer to them as the feminine core, or the feminine energy, or the feminine essence. I mention all of these because I don't want you to get confused with the words, because the people that studied all this, they just used all these different terms to describe it, okay? But naturally, women they have estrogen-driven traits. That means the ways that they behave are the result of a chemical and in their body, a hormone that is actually created and causes them to behave certain ways. So you can't blame us. Blame God. Okay, just kidding. Okay, so then with men, they have mostly testosterone, and we're going to refer to them as the male core, the masculine energy, or the masculine essence. And of course, they're naturally have testosterone-driven traits. Okay, so it's natural, though, for both of us to behave in both essences, okay? So we will have times in our life where women will need to go what we call into their masculine to basically survive, okay? Because it's a survival thing. And then we'll have times when men will do the same. Okay, so for example, with a man, if he needs to be supportive and loving, he has to kind of tap into basically the estrogen portion of his hormones, okay? And that's natural. Everybody does that. It does not mean anything. It's just the way it is. Okay, now, the first commandment that God gave Adam and Eve was to be fruitful and multiply. What does that mean? It means have sex and have kids. That's what it meant. So that means sex actually is not a bad thing, okay? Unfortunately, in today's society, it has turned into a bad thing because we have perverted it from what God wanted it to be. And so when we don't wait, like I didn't, I made a lot of mistakes. That's why it carried over into my intimate life with my husband, because he had all these visions because he knew I had previous boyfriends, and it was a disaster. So I tell you this because hopefully when you have communication with your children, okay, you will explain to them why it is not good to deviate from God's plan. And we had the discussion with my daughter, and we were very honest with her to the point that she was in tears because she realized that we didn't do it the right way, okay? But you know what? The bottom line is after that, she said, you know what? I respect you guys so much more for being honest, okay? And a lot of parents will lie to their kids. They'll say, oh, well, we did it this way, and they lie. But kids are smart. They know. You need to be honest with your kids, and you need to teach them God's way so that they don't get all messed up like Joe and I did. Now, so basically, sex was created by God for our enjoyment in a committed marriage between a man and a woman. And when a husband and wife enter into this communion, they unite not only their bodies, but their souls. And when I first heard this, actually, I think it was either Pastor or Rose or somebody that said this, it really hit me because just imagine that. So if you've had multiple partners, they've got a little piece of your soul. Okay? And so that's kind of creepy and it's kind of gross. And that's why it messes, especially with women when they don't do it the right way and wait for their husband, why it really messes with their brains. And again, it all carried over into our marriage, making it very dull and not the way that it should be. And it's not bad or dirty when it's done according to God's will and in the sanctity of marriage, and when it doesn't include the use of pornography or other people or things that are inappropriate involved. Okay, so we want to keep it pure.
So let's talk about pornography just briefly, all right? We hear that it's out there, and obviously the internet has made it a lot easier for access. You no longer have to go into the perverted bookstore there and kind of sneak behind the rack when the guy is not looking and kind of go and look if you're a younger boy or man, or try to hide it, and when you're purchasing it or whatnot, it's no longer that difficult. And there's estimates, and you can check the numbers on this, but anywhere from 95 to 98% of men have participated and been involved with pornography at some point in their life. Now that can be a very passive introduction to it. Maybe a friend just shows it and they're exposed to it. Maybe the flesh kind of wants to look a second time. Maybe as little as that. But it can be something that, as she said, almost like with inappropriate sex, that there's a portion of your soul that's given up. Well, your eyes also can't unsee something. So when it's introduced to you, you see it in that format. Now your portrayal of what God created for a beautiful union between committed man and woman is now changed. It's adulterated in some way. Pornography is so large that in the United States, if you were to combine the annual sales of the National Football League, Baseball League, and basketball, top 3 sports in this country, they don't make nearly as much as that of pornography in the United States alone. So think about all the T-shirts, the sales, the games, the this, the things in the parking lots, and all the partying and stuff that goes on, and the TV. People spend more on their cable to have these upgrades. Doesn't even come close to that of pornography. And the challenge with it is, it changes your perspective of what that union should be. Obviously, that just kind of makes sense. And it's also, to a woman, if they're ever aware of the fact that that happens, they feel like there is an adulterous situation going on, but they feel like they can't compete with this photoshopped, impossible image that's on the other side of that screen or on that paper. So it's very disheartening to them, and it really causes a divide in a relationship. And even if it's something that was done years before, maybe before you met your spouse, and maybe you never had any relationship with anyone prior to that spouse, it still skews a person's opinion of what that relationship should look like. And that's why it's so important to understand that role, especially as a parent, in terms of protecting yourselves, definitely, as men especially, but your children, your young boys, and even young women, that those things can be introduced to. So really try to put in those safeties, like covenant eyes and different things like that. There's all sorts of things to help protect that. But if struggling in some way, that's an important thing to really ask for help, because kind of like eating food, when people struggle with it and they're like, oh, I just need to go on a diet, or I need to lose weight, or I need to stop binge eating and stuff like that, they might have the willpower to not do it, but eating is required for life. But God also said the first commandment is be fruitful and multiply. So there's a very strong internal yearning and need for procreation to occur. So in a healthy way, good, offspring, children, and life goes on this planet. But adulterated by the enemy, and he does that very well. He finds those tools from which we love and appreciate, in good ways, and tries to twist them and morph them. And then by doing so, he feels like he's got those people captive. So if struggling with it in some way, please reach out to people that can help. Actually, in the church, they've been going through a series and just addictions and different things on Thursday nights. And I was talking to Pastor about some of the stats that they were going over yesterday, and they're staggering. So if you need assistance in some way, please reach out to myself, Pastor Mitch, who you saw him. He was working the sound booth if you don't know him from being in the church, or just pull aside a brother, in your own church. Okay, somebody try to help you with that. Don't try to do it alone. Okay. Thank you.
And the problem is this interferes and really puts a negative, has a negative effect on your passion in your relationship, because it really does, it robs you. It really does. So it's definitely best to try to handle that. So how do you maintain polarity and passion in your marriage? Well, first of all, you have to be who God created you to be in your natural essence most of the time. Okay, and we're going to talk about how we're going to actually do that. So if you are a woman, You have the feminine essence, so you need to be in that more than you are in your masculine, okay? And don't give in to society's tendency to make men and women the same. This actually decreases our sexual attraction and our passion for our spouse, okay? The problem is the world is trying to make men and women the same, okay? Listen, I'm a doctor, I am a business owner. I believe in equality in the workplace, okay? I'm sorry, if I work my bottom off and I work harder than my male counterpart, yes, I should be paid the same or more because I work harder. I believe in getting bonused and paid for the amount of effort you put into your work. That's what I believe in. I don't think I should be paid more because I'm a woman, and I shouldn't be paid less. But today's feminine movement is really not about that. It's about robbing us of our true femininity, which is what God gave us. Okay? There is nothing shameful about being a woman and being feminine in your core. Actually, it's a glorious thing, and it's beautiful. And we don't want to be the same as men. That's not what we want. And that's why our marriages are getting destroyed, because we are, in our society, they are trying to teach us to, everybody has to be exactly the same. Listen, in God's eyes, he died for us all. He didn't just die on the cross for men, he died for women too. It's not about, men being better than women in God's eyes, but it's different. He created us differently. It's like a giraffe and a dog. He created them with two different purposes, but they're both animals. He loves them equally, okay? So please, if you are, I don't want to offend anybody that considers themselves a feminist, but you have to understand it's a total different movement than what it originally began to be. So, yes, we talked about that. It's just a total catastrophe for our polarity. So, God wants us to celebrate the differences between the sexes. It's a great thing. And he wants the husband and wife to play two separate and distinct roles. So, all right, so the bottom line is it ain't what it used to be, okay? So, nowadays we want more than just financial provision and a homemaker. Okay, so back in the day, like my grandparents and great-grandparents, they were fine with traditional roles, okay? I remember, my grandmother would be home. She would be taking care of the kids, cooking and ironing and doing all that stuff. My grandfather would go to work. That was considered normal. That was considered acceptable, okay? Now, what's happening, though, is things around, I would say during my parents' era is when things started to really change. I even saw it in my own parents' relationship. Early on in the relationship, my mom stayed home and, and it was that whole normal, what seemed normal. And then it got to a point where she really wanted to start working and she wanted to go out and do other things. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. But what has to happen is we have to all be able to adapt to those changes, okay? And so as we shift from those traditional roles, our expectations start to change, okay? And so many of you have probably seen it with your parents as well. So now what's happening is the husbands want the women to go out and help with the financial provision because it's so hard to make ends meet nowadays, okay? And then at the same time, the women, they're out working. They want the husbands to come and help with the house. And so things start to get really complicated and very difficult. Okay? But the problem is that not only do we now want our husbands to provide financially, but we also want them to provide emotionally. Okay? And this is where they struggle. And again, I saw it in, my parents' relationship, seeing my mom wanting more of that emotional provision, which she really just didn't get a lot of that. He was a great provider financially, but the emotional provision just really wasn't there, okay? And that's what we want more of nowadays, okay? And I don't think that this is going to be a bad thing. It's actually a great thing because it actually helps to deepen our connection as a family and strengthen the ties. But it has to be done properly. And that's where our society is going off the rails because we just don't really understand. And that's really what we're going to be talking about. And you have to understand that it's actually very normal and it actually feels good to sometimes tap into the opposite energy. And as long as you just don't get stuck there. But a lot of people, including myself, got stuck there. Okay, so I go through all of this schooling. I mean, first of all, growing up, let me kind of go back a little bit here. Growing up, again, I have an amazing relationship with my parents, so I don't ever want to sound like I'm being disrespectful, but I feel like I've gone through what I've gone through so that I can share it with people, and they know, I already told them, and they're listening, and they know I love them, so. But anyway, but the bottom line is my dad really wanted a boy. And so he used to, you know, kind of treat us sort of like, you know, you think a boy would. We helped build the house and carried bricks and cut wood and did all of this stuff. And I remember him always saying to me, you don't need a man. You need to just make sure you can take care of yourself. You need to provide for yourself. What if your husband leaves you? You need to be capable, okay? And honestly, I think that was really great advice, and I'm glad that I had it because it did make me more capable. But the problem is that in my mind, I always had to kind of be in control, and I always had to make all the decisions. And, you know, I remember when we first, because remember, we went into business together before we got married. So I remember my dad saying, you have to make all the business decisions. You can't trust him. You grew up in a house. We had our own business. You know what you're doing. I mean, imagine like my brain here, I'm trying to go and run this whole business myself, and I'm trying to make all these decisions, and by the end of the night, I mean, I'm working 12-hour days, 5-6 days a week. I literally laid on the floor, like my blood sugar just like dropped through the tank. I would literally turn evil at the end of the night because I was so emotionally and physically exhausted. Because I was trying to be something God didn't create me to be. He was having me take on all of these roles, and guess what was happening? As I became more masculine, he became more feminine. And now I'm looking at him like, what is this? You know, and I'm feeling, oh, what's wrong? Oh. You know, and I'm starting to almost lose my attraction to him because he was starting to just let me make all the decisions, and I'm thinking, you know, why aren't you at least trying? And so that would just convince me more that I had to take over more.
Real quick example of that, all right? What do we say? Polarities attract, right? So let's just say, for instance, we've got masculine on the one side, feminine on the other. Attraction, all right? Now, she's forced to go into her masculine. Comes home, hi honey, trying to be polite, social, how was your day? And I heard about it because I was there watching it. And this just doesn't work. We just can't get intimate. We can't get that polarity in line because I'm still being masculine because all day long I'm still dealing with people and trying to, well, interestingly, I'm trying to help people and be empathetic and nurture them and comfort them, which is a role that as a doctor and a provider, you're kind of forced to go a little bit towards the more feminine nature of you, that core essence of empathy. So I'm on the other side. Oh, there's our attraction again. Kind of works, okay? Not fantastic attraction, but it's some versus bickering, okay? Just not meeting at all, okay? We're just constantly repulsing, in a sense, of each other. Mm-hmm. So just think about that. Keep using this in your mind in terms of understanding how this actually works.
Okay, so let's, just so you can understand the feminine energy, let's just talk about that. So first of all, it's very nurturing and giving. And like Joe said, as you know, chiropractors, we are nurturing people all day. I mean, we'll have people come in, they're crying, they're in pain, or they're crying because their husband just left them, or we become counselors, we become friends. I mean, it's like, it's crazy. And so we're very nurturing, okay? So there's elements of our job that we do need to tap into that feminine side, okay? But then there's the business element of running staff and making sure that the schedule's right, and that's where you tap into your masculine. It's like boom, 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 boom. You got to be structured and focused and all of that stuff. And so you're all over the place. But back to the feminine energy. So the feminine energy wants to feel beautiful and radiant, okay? And so obviously we see a lot of this in society where we're making women, you know, like even just disgustingly beautiful, where it's fake, you know, where they're photoshopping everything, which that's its own issue. But what happens is it's in our core to want to be that way, but we're trying to do it in the wrong way. We're trying to do it from the outside instead of the inside, and you'll know what I mean in a minute when I show you an example. But the feminine energy loves to communicate. Okay, watch little girls. Like I watch, you know, my girls with their girlfriends, and you see them, they're like, they love to just talk all the time, and it's just really cute, and you just see that. It's that real feminine energy just coming out. And they are very good at multitasking. We talked about that last week. I mean, think about a mom answering a phone and making dinner and breastfeeding her child and doing 10 million things at once. So we're very good at that. And we also, one thing to understand is that we really grow through encouragement and acknowledgement, okay? So my poor husband, not only am I feminine, but my love language is words of affirmation. So he has to like literally just live every moment telling me how wonderful I am and how good of a job I did. And the poor guy, I mean, he lives with female dogs, females, you know, girls, and then he works with all women, and then he goes to school and does his school board thing with almost all women. So he's around it all the time.
Thank you, Nate. Good man.
Okay, but you have to understand, guys, that your woman needs your acknowledgement. Okay, she needs you to encourage her and lift her up. That is a very important part of helping your woman to grow. If you feel that, oh, you want your wife to get in better shape, you don't say, honey, you look like you're getting fat. You say, wow, honey, I really love your body. And when you find things to compliment, when the more she feels, wow, the more she wants to impress you. If you want her to grow in another area, you look for opportunities to compliment her when she's doing a good job in something, and that will encourage her to want to do those things. When we get told negative things, like I had a guy come into the office one time and he goes, how do I tell my wife that she's fat? And I'm like, are you joking? Really? And I literally could have fell over, and I'm like, you don't. But the thing is, you have to know how to help your wife to grow, because we really need your encouragement. That's super, super important. The other thing is women are very free-flowing, radiant, and even if a woman is not physically attractive, if she's in her feminine core, there is just something beautiful about that, and I'm going to kind of show you here. Now, here's a woman. She's an older woman. If you had to guess, would she be in her masculine or in her feminine? Okay, exactly. But here's an older woman, and look how beautiful she is. Okay? Now, you may not even think that she's physically beautiful, but there's something radiant about her. When women put on masculine masks, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, they literally become hardened to the point that as they get older, you can actually physically see it. Like, if a woman that's in her feminine walks in, even if she's 85 years old, every woman, every man is going to notice and be like, wow, there's something beautiful about her. Not in a sick way, but just, wow, look, she's beautiful. Okay? We all can appreciate beauty. And so it's interesting how you can tell by almost looking at people how hardened they are, okay? So the feminine energy will find herself wishing that her partner would take her into account and just make a decision that is good for her. Be my hero, know what I like, okay? The worst thing you can do is say, oh, honey, Valentine's Day is coming up. Here's $50. Go get something for yourself. My father used to do that. I love him. Okay, he'd be like, oh, buy yourself some flowers. It's not the same, guys, okay? The thing with women is we want you to think about what you're going to do. Remember, the planning is 1 point, and then the actual gift is 1 point. You only get 1 point for each, okay? But when you take the time to think about what we would like and what we want, it makes us feel special, okay? And that's what's important. It's not, the money. Okay? And it doesn't even have to be expensive. Just do something that shows us that you care, all right? So if your wife has a really rough day and she likes going out to dinner at a specific place, you say, oh, honey, why don't we you look like you had a rough day. Let's go out. Or maybe you can make her her favorite meal. But it's taking her needs into account makes you feel like you're our hero. Okay? And that's what we want, and that's what we need.
Back to the Valentine's thing, she said planning is 1 point and doing it is another. I've learned that if you plan on the day of the event, it's not called planning, that's called just crisis management.
0 points.
It's still 1 point sometimes. They'll like the gift, but she literally asked me afterwards, when did you think of doing this? I don't lie, so it was today or yesterday or last week. When I've actually been able to say a week in advance, she is like stoked. I really think it's more than 2 points.
Yeah, it's really weird, but does anyone else agree with me on this? Yeah. Okay, good, right. Awesome. It really, because I hate it when it's like this last minute throw together, like, oh, it's our anniversary. What do I do? Yeah, exactly. Thank you. That's very well said. So, they want to feel his masculine energy, direction, presence, and passion, and want him to take a stronger lead in their lives together rather than being ambiguous and unclear. Okay? The bottom line is, God created us different, right? And so we were made to be a helpmate for our husbands. And so, in a sense, we're looking for them in many ways to take the lead. Again, I'm a strong woman. I'm not saying you can't, be, whatever you want to be and be strong, and that's not what I'm saying. But there's just something that's very attractive and awesome when your husband steps up to the plate and says, you know what? This is what our family needs to do. I love you guys, and this is what we're going to do. There's just something awesome about that, okay? As long as they've done it with your
wisdom, your
with your good intentions in mind, okay? Trying to do something good for you. Now, it's very different when there's the household that's run as a dictatorship. That's very different. Okay, well, this is what we're doing because I said we're doing it. That's not what that's about. But, we love it when our husbands will lovingly take the lead. That is a very good thing. And with women whose husbands are not doing so, basically they end up forced to live in their masculine. Okay? So if you think your wife is controlling and you think your wife is, just too overpowering, well, it's probably because you're not stepping up to the plate. Because that's what happens is somebody has to run the show, and somebody has to be making decisions. If the husband's not doing it, then it forces the wife to do it, okay? So now what you have is you have a butting of heads that occurs between them because they're both in the same polarity, okay? When I was in my masculine, okay, I had a masculine mask on because I was still core in my feminine. He was masculine in his core, but he had a feminine mask on because otherwise we wouldn't be able to survive because we'd be fighting all the time. Okay, we'd go through moments where we would butt heads and we would fight, but then it got to the point where he just said, whatever, and I took over and I was miserable. He was miserable, okay? We often do it because we feel like we have to do it. It's not because we want to do it. And I will tell you, when we went to this seminar and we came back, my life drastically changed for the good. I literally was getting physically sick because of it. I was emotionally stressed. I was miserable, and when we came back and he started making an effort to actually step more into his masculine, I felt like 1,000,000 pounds was lifted off my back, and I was still very good at what I did. I was still effective. As a matter of fact, at this point, I basically do most of the training in the office, and I have, he does a certain part, but in many ways, I do a lot of the running of the business. But I learned to go home and actually just put my feminine back on. And that's a really hard thing to transition out of. And so you're going to have to really be patient with your spouse as they're trying to transition. But I could not step down till he stepped up. Okay? And so that's where this is going to be really hard for you guys to really hear, because it really is about you guys stepping up so that we can step down. All right? And believe me, everyone will be much happier that way. Amen. So back to the feminine nature. So we have our monthly hormonal cycle really makes women very much like a tropical storm, okay? So I said women are very complicated. Women are beautiful, they're amazing, but they're complicated, okay? That's because we have that hormonal cycle. All right? So what happens is it's almost like we have multiple personalities. And Tony Robbins actually went through and named all of his wife's personalities. And one of which he called Storm, which was when she was not happy, he called her Storm. And so that's the thing, is you have to learn your wife's different personalities and just understand that it's not usually even you. If she's stressed out, most likely she's just not quite feeling loved and supported in something, but it might not necessarily even be from you. And the nice thing, guys, is you can be the solution by just saying to her, honey, I sense that something's going on. Is there something I can do to help you and to support you? And she will love that. It's not that you have to fix every single problem that we have, but you need to try to be there and help us through that. And often women will make emotional decisions, okay? Now, one thing about women is we have amazing intuition. Pastor always said, a man who doesn't listen to a woman's intuition is an idiot, okay? Because we have amazing intuition. Joe, I have a feeling, blah, 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 blah. Usually, that feeling is right, okay? And there's times where he's like, I wish I listened to you, okay? But the problem is most women and most decisions, they're based on emotion because everything about a woman is emotion, okay? So sometimes we're not in the best situation to make a decision. That's why I feel God gave us our husbands for us to balance each other out. We have women's intuition, and then we have the logical thought process coming from the husband. It's a beautiful marriage. Women also really want attention and acknowledgement often, specifically from their husbands. Okay, that's super important. And the problem is if you're not giving it to her, guess what? She's going to get it somewhere else, and that's not a good thing. So you need to be acknowledging your wife. No matter how strong she seems, I'm a pretty strong woman, but I will tell you, my husband probably, if he was doing it right, he'd be exhausted from acknowledging me so much, because that's a need that I have from him. And if he keeps acknowledging me, guess what? I am his raving fan. And then why would I ever want to go anywhere else? Why would I ever want to leave him? Because he's giving me the things that I need. And again, I'm not saying that your spouse does not complete you, okay? As a Christian, I believe that Christ completes us. So you don't want to put that much pressure on your spouse, but the bottom line is the hierarchy is God first, marriage second, children third. Obviously, God puts a lot of emphasis on the marriage, and so we do need to expect our spouse to help us, and we need to help them to, keep us in a state where we feel like, we are a raving fan and our marriage is strong, but not putting that much pressure that they feel like, they're basically replacing God. That's not what this is. And basically, the feminine energy is the life energy that gives life and reminds us of nature and is beautiful, okay? It's women that basically create life. Obviously, we need the assistance of a man, but we give birth. I mean, how beautiful is that? And so really, that's why the feminine energy is really it is a beautiful thing.
Sorry.
And they're all about giving and receiving love, and her primary joy and suffering is from love. So if you look at women, the most joy we get is when we have our family together and everything's great, but the most suffering we have is when that love is taken away, or maybe, one of our kids isn't talking to us, or they're angry at us, or when we feel like that love is pulled away, it is the most amount of suffering that a woman will have. Okay, so it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. And women want to be filled up with love, while a man's goal is to empty his mind to obtain a sense of freedom, and then he can love and receive love. Remember, we talked about the rubber band, okay? So a man is like a rubber band. He has to pull back, get a little space and freedom, and then he comes back ready to give love and to receive love, okay? Where women, they just fill up, fill up, fill up. I mean, we could have it all the time, that his attention and his love, but then what happens is he needs to pull away, and that's okay. That's why he has his cave. And so we need to respect those differences. And when our women are not getting filled up by their husbands, they look to other things, maybe another man, but they'll also look to food. Okay? That's why a lot of women really struggle with gaining weight, because they tend to emotionally eat, because in many ways they're not getting that emotional attention and that love and that support. Or maybe they'll go and pour themselves into working out or pour themselves into their children. Okay? That's a big one. Okay? I know a lot of women that their children are the top of, they get whatever they want. It's all about the kids. And that's dangerous on some level, because when you ignore your marriage, your children aren't going to end up having a good foundation either. It sounds all noble to put your kids number one, but that's not how God instructed us. He said, God, marriage, children. There's a reason. Because without a strong marriage, the family falls apart. No matter how good of a parent you are, if your marriage is awful, your family is going to fall apart, and your kids will suffer as a result. Okay? So they can pour themselves into all different kinds of things. And again, filling your love tank is very different from someone completing you. It's not about that, okay? So last slide that I'm going to have Joe take over here is examples of women going to their male side. So what does that look like when a woman is going to her masculine? okay? They're more independent and less attached, okay? So women, if you're starting to feel like, oh, I don't care what he does, he can just go out and do whatever. You're less attached, you're feeling more independent, that's a sign that you're going more toward your male side, okay? You're not as emotional. So maybe you used to be really emotional with certain things in a good way, but now you're a little bit more hardened, okay? Good problem solver. Again, it doesn't mean these are bad things if you're not doing them all the time, but that's one of the examples. Also, being tough and capable, all right? You know, I'm really tough. And listen, I pride myself in all of these at different times. As a matter of fact, sometimes I feel like I want him to kind of be my hero a little bit more, but I think he often feels like, well, she's so tough and she's so capable, and you know, he doesn't have to worry about those things. Like one thing we talked about last week, I think, was when he went to soccer and he thought he texted me, and you remember he was driving in the bad weather and I got all nervous, and I just wanted him to, you know, text me and let me know that he got there okay. Sometimes I feel like he doesn't even care if I get there okay. You know, I'm sitting here worried, like, text me when you get there, text me when you leave, just to make sure he's okay. And then I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm driving an hour away, and he never told me, oh, make sure you text me when you get there, so I probably never even told you, but I want you to tell me to text you.
You've told me.
So I did? Okay,
yes,
well,
yeah.
Just listen then. You know, but sometimes I do. I feel like he just thinks, oh, well, whatever. But I really want him to be there for me and to care about me. And, you know, it makes you feel good. And also just being physically strong, okay? So a lot of women, as they go more toward their masculine, they get really obsessed about exercise. And again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's a way to, you're building up more testosterone. When you exercise, you actually build up more testosterone. And it's a good thing to exercise. I'm not saying not to, but when you're just using that as an escape from reality, then that's not a good thing. And then more competitive, okay? As we get more masculine, we get more competitive, okay?
How do I go back? I want to go to...
Yeah.
To go back to that from the male perspective. All right, so what do men say often about their wives? Oh, she's so needy. She's always just asking me to do things. She's just always all over me about stuff. Okay. She's more in her feminine in many ways when she's asking you to do that. So the opposite, men, if you don't listen and help her with that, you're making her be more independent. And you might think for a minute, oh, good. She's finally doing some of that on her own. You've made her more masculine. Good job. Okay. If that's occurred, that's what's going on. She's not as emotional now. Oh, less arguments are going to occur? Not really. They're going to be different arguments. You're going to have two bulls butting head instead of the female concerned and wanting for the attention of her husband. It's going to be more this from a male-male type of perspective, or masculine-masculine. And if I say male-male, that's really what I mean is masculine, energy. Good problem solver. Oh, now she can figure those things out on her own. Same thing. You've pushed her over to that side. It's not a good sign. You may have a little bit less bickering at first, or a little bit less of what you thought was smothering, or too much of your mother hanging over you type of opinion of that situation. But sorry, you've made at best a friend and at most an adversary to basically be competing with, and the rest of those as well. So she'll become competitive and in ways with you as well. All right, so masculine traits. So let's figure those out. A desire to tear through obstacles. This is the little boy. Okay, he wakes up in the morning after about a millisecond. He's just tearing through the house. He's breaking things. He's picking up the cat from extremities and different things, throwing it around. He'll run through the screen door without thinking about it. That's like the masculine energy, just trying to break through obstacles. Men, as we're adults, okay, we want to conquer. I mean, think about all of the movies we ever watched that are about wars and stuff like that. They want to expand their territory. They want to go out and conquer. They'll put their life on the line, and tens of thousands of men, fighting for them to try to conquer. That's masculine energy. And not always in a healthy, obviously, directive. They're very task-oriented and can only do one task at a time, otherwise they get very stressed. Honey, don't bother me right now, I'm doing this. It's that constant, whatever you're doing is more important than everything around you. And I said I think it was last week, men, that often it's not always our wives that are the recipients of this, but our kids. Oh, no, I'm doing this right now, this thing that is so crucial and important for something, a deadline or whatever, but your kids obviously need you for those 18 years or more that they're around you. And if what you're doing is so important and so, in your core, you could be obviously even throwing them the other direction. So you still have to break loose of these things sometimes, and you can't even always stay in that as well. As she said, you have to flip-flop back and forth. I can't be all masculine and just breaking necks in the office because I want to break through obstacles. Yeah, that subluxation, and just send them out the door and nobody comes back. I have to have empathy as well. Just understand that. All right.
Wait, that's what you do with me when you adjust
That's
me.
her adjustment. Yes, it's very quick. All right, very focused, okay? We can be focused, although sometimes I'm not always that, so probably not always in my masculine like I need to be. Like to forget the things when he is stressed about. Right? Women like to talk about it. Men like to forget about it. Well, women, if you want us to relive it, guess what? You're going to draw us into the more feminine side. We'll just go out and have tea together afterwards. It's not really the husband-wife role that will ensue from that. Women who don't feel this masculine presence from their spouse become more masculine themselves. Just a natural tendency. It's going to happen. Therefore, less feminine, causing further tension, stress, and decreased passion in the marriage. Okay? Real quick show of hands so I can see if you're not asleep. Who would actually really like passion in their marriage? Okay, not saying you don't have it, but you want some or you want more. Okay, and if you don't, someone should raise your hand for you because that's just crazy. Why not have more passion? That's like saying, would you like more money at your job? No, I'm good. I'm done. No more raises. It just doesn't make sense, okay? You don't have to worship that, but it's not a bad thing to have, right? So women lose trust in their husbands if they often find them insecure and undirected. Okay, there's times that we're uncertain in life, and that's fine. We're men, we're still human. Okay, but to live in that and misdirect it all the time is not something that they're gonna admire. And waiting for them to take the lead most of the time, not great. Who's ever had to wait for their wife to take the lead? They'll do it. They'll step in, and then they'll stay in that role. And then you're like, can I have that back? It's like if she's done a lot of this, but if she just kept the mic the whole time and I never got to say a thing, I'd be like, well, she took the lead, and that was great. I didn't have to worry about screwing up, but kind of wasn't very cool either. And if they do that in life, in everything, it's not very fun, and we feel lesser in some way if that's the case. So what do you want to do tonight is the quote, okay? You ask, I don't care, she says. What do you want to do? He answers. All right, so not going to be a great thing there. Men, step up. Make a decision and make them happy.
Because really, when we say, I don't care, it really means, you know me. Make a decision that I will like, and then you'll be my hero. Okay? So that's what that means. Again, you have to understand the Morse code.
Remember, and the Sherlock Holmes analogy she said last week? I mean, I brought that up this week. She said something to me, and I'm like, that is way too Sherlock Holmes. I cannot figure that one out. I had to ask her directly, what's the real woman wording here? And she finally confessed it, whatever she was trying to say. But remember that. I mean, Sherlock Holmes, we know the character, but in a playful way, realize you have to be Sherlock Holmes, and once in a while you have to confess, I'm not good enough at Sherlock Holmes. Tell me, what do you really need? And they'll do that, and there's a connection that comes from that real, deep, true communication. Symptoms of a role reversal. Okay, this is where you really want to start to understand it. And you can look at them and say, oh yeah, that's definitely her.
Oh, well, this is
well,
what
guess
I was
what? There's
feeling.
two in that relationship. So if it's her, it's likely that you're the other side of that. Okay, so just turn that mirror around. Emotionally drained, stressed, depressed, lack of motivation, lack of sexual drive, physically ill. Where does that come from? Resentful, angry, lack of purpose. Now, how could even physically ill come from that? Because often when your body's in a stress state, which it would be when it's not living in that natural state, okay, you're designed to do stuff as a masculine man or as a feminine woman, that's just free-flowing, okay? The term dis-ease, or disease, I should say, comes from dis-ease. So when something's not easy for you in your natural state, it becomes unhealthy. So your body is using more energy and more effort and more push and more willpower and whatever to do whatever it does, which takes away actually from the immune system's ability to keep you well. So when you're constantly finding that you're getting sick and different things are happening, you may not be living in that state. Not saying there's not true disease and illness. Do not get me wrong. I'm not saying, oh, I had a heart attack, it's because I wasn't living up to my role. No, those things do happen, okay? But at the same token, there is a large degree that can occur. But being resentful, angry, and lack of purpose. Lack of purpose is huge. Did you say it last week about men, retiring from a job? Okay, you guys all heard that? Okay, within 6 months is when most men that retire from a job will have a heart attack. Often a fatal heart attack if they're going to have one, because they've lost that lack of purpose. And that purpose causes drive and causes certain hormones to be produced, and it's an important part for survival.
And when we take over our husband's role, okay, when we start to become that masculine being, we take their sense of purpose away from them. And then they don't feel good about themselves. And same thing, when, the husband is in his feminine, it sort of takes our sense of purpose away. And then there's just not that synergy, and there's not that attraction, and the loss of respect, like everything just crumbles.
So women suppressing the male side is not as bad as suppressing her female side, okay? So obviously women have a male side and a female side, so they can suppress the male side easier than they can their own core. So, but if it is suppressed, it lowers the hormone oxytocin, okay, which is very important in a woman's body, which normally helps a woman to decrease stress. So if they're changing that hormone balance, they can't actually handle stress as well. And you're wondering, why is she so emotional? Why is she so stressed? Because in many cases, she's being forced to be the opposite role in some way.
And that's why I was collapsing on the ground at the end of the day, because I was exhausted from trying to be a man.
And testosterone is that hormone in men, which is why men often like to go and lift weights or do karate, and we're going to talk about some of the ways from which those things can occur, but that's a way for men to actually de-stress, which possibly to a woman would look like, wow, why would you go and lift something and push things around to de-stress? Because men are actually producing testosterone versus another hormone called cortisol. All right, if you're producing one, cortisol, there's a very fancy thing called pregnenolone steal. There's a certain precursor to all the hormones in your body. You don't need all the physiology, but if you're basically making this precursor, this ingredient, it can go and make cortisol, it can make estrogen, or it can make testosterone. So when women make more estrogen, okay, and like the oxytocin, and men make obviously testosterone. If you're stressed in whatever way and you're allowed to remain there, maybe because the spouse is keeping you in the opposite role, okay, that's going to keep you stressed. So I'm going to make cortisol. Therefore, I can't make my predominant hormone, testosterone. And I will literally physiologically, that's a hard word to say, be less masculine in my character. And literally my muscle tone, my brain's function, my organs function, my heart's ability to repair from stress and different things in my body will be lessened because that hormone is reduced. That's how significant this is. It's not just some hokey-pokey energy, up and down thing like we use some magnets. It's true physiological change. And the same thing occurs with a woman. There's that balance we showed you last week of the estrogen and progesterone parts of a cycle. So if a woman remains stressed all the time and like, I can't get my cycle regular and I'm not sure why, and why is she so crazy for 5 days before the cycle and she's bleeding forever during the cycle. I know that's kind of gross. I talk about it all the time in the office, so sorry. Okay, but these different things that occur during a normal cycle in a woman, and you're like, well, where's that coming from? In many cases, you have to own up to some of that because you're not allowing them to be who they really need to be. It's that important.
And believe me, ladies, I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I hate the fact that he goes and plays soccer every week. But you know what? The bottom line is it makes him happy. I would love to have him just home and, being with me and the girls. And believe me, I have to talk myself through it every Thursday, okay, this is good for him, but it gives him a lot of joy, and it gives him, that feeling of being young again, and all that stuff. And so you have to just say, listen, you each have to sacrifice for the other, okay? So men, you have to sacrifice, let your wife unload her purse. Us women have to sacrifice, allow them their cave time, and then it's only going to make your life much, much better, okay?
The good news is I did text her last night when I got there. In fact,
yes.
I might have called her.
He called me.
And then before I left the parking lot, even though she was starting to doze off, and as I was pulling into town, which she was upset because she was already asleep, okay? And then as I pulled into the driveway, so I did it in abundance. See how you learn from your mistakes?
Move on.
All right, sorry. All right.
I'm going to get masculine.
See how quickly it can change. I cause stress. Why do I feel like there's an emotional role reversal in my marriage? Well, let's find out about that.
Because most likely there is.
There probably is. Increasing feminine energy. Where would that come from? Spend time each day emptying your purse, emotionally undress. Men must accept you for who you are.
I think this is supposed to be my part.
All right, yeah, she's going to elaborate on that one.
He's
Sorry,
like, what?
I lost that one. So.
All right, so women, how do we go about increasing our feminine energy? Well, we need to spend the time emptying our purse, but we need to emotionally undress in front of our husbands. What does that mean? It means we need to bear our emotion to him. Okay? Because what the husband really doesn't realize is he will feel more in his masculine by allowing his wife to do this, and she will feel more in her feminine by actually doing it. And so as we just say, oh, and this happened, and this made me feel this way, and then she said this, and then it made me feel this way. By the time you're done, the husband's like, what do I do? But you don't have to do anything. You just have to listen. So practice unloading your purse. Communicate with friends and family regularly. Okay? That communication really helps you stay in your feminine. Take walks to enjoy nature and be in prayer. Okay? Nature is very much about beauty, okay? So you really want to go out and enjoy nature. It actually puts us in more of a relaxed state. Right? Thank you notes for people who go out of their way to do something. That really taps us into our feminine energy. Taking long baths by yourself with a candle, relaxing music. That's a great way to do it as well.
Go back real quick on that, please.
Go back.
Yeah. All right. We do marriage counseling with people all the time, you know, 2-on-2, talking to people. And it is very common that I'll see people that have a total role reversal. And the men are complaining. They're like, wow, she's constantly just talking and just, basically dumping her purse in front of me in different words that they describe it, and they're complaining about that. But she's trying to be feminine, and that person isn't owning up to that. I've even heard people say, she just wants to be with her family all the time, and this and that and the other thing. And they're complaining about these things, but that is a way for her to be that feminine person. And it's important for us men to understand that these things that we often complain about, and she can speak obviously to the women like this, is that is their way of being in their natural state. And if we fight it, we are basically creating a lot of opposition in our lives and a lot more stress. And think of it this way. If you really want to provide for your family, okay, many people work 40 to 60 hours a week, and you bust your hump all week long, and you're just so upset with your paycheck, all the taxes taken out of all these different things, right? And here you go, honey, there's a check, okay? And that's your provision for your family, 60 hours a week, and you're not even happy with how you did it. Or she unloads her purse for an hour or 2 hours for the entire week, and she is completely thrilled with your ability to be attentive and to listen to her and to allow her to be in her feminine core and to connect with her husband. And you now have less bickering and fighting and upset, and true provision is happening. Which one really makes more sense? I'm not a mathematician, but I think the 2 hours, if it really comes down to that, and it probably won't after a couple weeks. Okay, I mean, you can give far more time. I mean, you could be with them far more than 2 hours. But I'm saying the straight just unload and unload of the emotional purse. 2 hours is a great investment. Okay, compounding interest, we heard of it in financial, talking. Okay, a penny turns into 2 and a 4. Well, this is compounding interest like you would not believe. Okay, so put the time in now. It is very much worth it for provision. Thank you.
Okay, but most important, you have to trust your husband and you have to open up to him, okay? If you're feeling like you can't talk to your husband about something, you probably have a little bit of a masculine mask going on. You have to trust that he will receive that and he will still love you and he will still want to be with you. You just have to trust and open up to him. And really, often women say, well, my husband never wants to talk. Really, what that means is he never wants to listen. Because the truth is, really what we want from our husbands is not for them to really talk as much as we want them to listen. Okay? Now listen, today Joe had a pretty stressful day, and he had to unload his purse today. And that's okay. And I sat there and I just said, honey, I'm really proud of you. You're working hard. Whatever I said to him. And I let him do that, and that's okay. But most of the time, he just needs to be listening to me as I unload my purse, okay? But sometimes we both have to do that, all right? And women, help him to support you by asking him to unload your purse. He's not going to remember initially, okay? And believe me, I understand. I tell him things all the time. Did you remember this? Oh, you didn't tell me that. Yeah, I did. Okay. So they forget a lot because they're stressed. They're trying to juggle a bunch of stuff. So initially, you need to ask him, honey, is it okay if I take 10 minutes, and just unload my purse for the day? Yeah, that'd be great. And husbands, all you have to do is sit and listen. That's it.
And do remember,
just be empathetic.
We're single task minded, so if we're actually in the task and they start talking and we're still in the task, we're really not hearing them. So one of two things has to happen. They have to realize that and say, okay, when you're done, can we talk, which is a good thing, or realize that may not be as important in that moment and actually listen. And I need to do the mirror thing there. I'm awful at this because I think I'm task-oriented in many cases, but if I'm doing that at the expense of her, it's a tragedy.
Okay, and try to unload your purse, as quickly as possible, just so that they don't get discouraged. Because the problem is, they're sitting there with a million things on their to-do list, and, they're giving you the time. Try to, be somewhat focused. Don't get too masculine about it, but try to move it along. And don't complain to him about him. All right? Complaining is not what you want to do to your husband. Nagging does not change him. It annoys him. Okay? Never on planet Earth will nagging work. So you need to be more strategic. You need to go into your masculine for this one. Okay? You got to be strategic. And you basically, if you have to whine and complain, do that to a girlfriend. Figure out what your emotional need is, and then go back to him and say, Joe, honey, I understand that you're really stressed, but, I really just, if you could just give me a few minutes to unload my purse. I've just felt so neglected this week because you've been doing all this stuff with the board and with the school and with this. I really need your attention because I'm really struggling with some things. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
All right.
See how she built me up in that, too? She's like, you're doing all this. I'm like, wow, I really
Wow,
am
and that
doing
was
a
even
lot.
true for this week.
Yeah.
That's the funny
so I'm
thing.
like, oh, yeah, sure, honey. I'm fixing everything else. What can I do for you? It literally draws me in instead of pushes me away. She's a master. That's all I can say. I'm not, but she's quite good.
Thank you. All right. Anyway, so then when you're done with all that complaining, then you have a clear and concise idea of what you need to do. So when you're done, basically you need to strongly acknowledge him. Honey, thank you so much. I really appreciate that you took the time. I can't even believe how much better I feel right now. And your husband's like, I didn't even do anything. Okay? But it's that presence. Okay? And when he realizes, wow, I did a good job, he's going to want to do it more, okay? Then if after unloading you feel ready for solutions and you want them, ask him. It will make him feel good. But do not ask if you're really not ready for a solution. Because the one thing that annoys men the most is when you ask for a solution and then you don't do it. Okay? I saw this with my parents all the time. My mother would ask my father's opinion, and then she'd do something different. He'd be like, well, why'd you bother asking me then? And then he'd get all worked up, and I think, take your solutions most of the time, don't I? Okay, so I learned from my parents on that one. All right, so that's good. All right, so how to increase masculine energy. We're almost finishing up here.
Yeah, winding it up here. All right, so do martial arts or other competitive sports. Go to action movies if you don't want to put on shorts and kick things, okay? You can at least watch other people do it, okay? It's an important thing, very helpful. Literally, I'm going to watch Cinderella Man tonight. It's already on my list, okay? It's not about Cinderella. It's about a boxer. He overcomes adversity. Great stuff. It's my go-to movie when I've had a long,
We've seen it 100
stressful
times.
week, but it's got my name written all over it, okay? Have cave time. It's important. You don't need a lot. Literally, if I can get a 12 to 15-minute workout in the morning, which is not a lot, I'm not going to become like, who's the Rock? I'm not going to become the Rock on that, but I feel like I've done something positive towards my body, positive towards my health, and positive for my brain. I need that defrag time. Sometimes before I start my day, so then I'm filled up in a sense to basically take on the rest of the day. Exercise, obviously using your muscles, press your limits. Yeah, don't just do like the 5-pound curls. They're not going to do anything. You really got to push yourself a little bit, guys. All right, regularly give up your seat for older people or women. Open doors for women or do other acts of kindness. This actually does go a long way. When you just open one door and there's that appreciative person that's like, oh, thank you. Not the one that's like ready to call her lawyer because you're being like a, anti-feminist situation. I'm talking the real, appreciative ones.
That.
Those are great, okay? Do those. Push yourself out of your comfort zone. Take regular calculated risks. Face fears, public speaking. Who here does not like public speaking? Okay, can you come up here? You're going to help us with the last part of this. I'm just kidding. No. I'm just kidding. All right, but seriously, push yourself out because you will grow in that, and it is really fantastic for you. All right, masculine grows through challenge, okay? I wouldn't necessarily do it in, a suit and tie like that, but hey, if it floats your boat, have at it. Most masculine thing you can do, you don't have to break down barriers, kick through things, conquer. I saw parts of the movie Troy recently, and the whole thing was about this love affair gone awry, and then, one guy, it's just, you don't have to conquer the world. Be silent, present, and listen. A lot easier. Just like the investment of 2 hours time versus 60. This is hard to do, actually. You'd almost sometimes rather do the 60 because this is, like she said, women undressing their emotions in front of you, they're burying themselves. And sometimes when they're talking to us and we're truly being silent and present and listen, it's almost like we're letting them in to see us in our true sense of who we are. And it is vulnerable in some ways. That sounds weird, but it really is. It's like, honey, I'm really here. I'm really present. You're seeing the real me, the one I want to truly be, but I have to just I have to cover up and do a lot of things, put on these masks, as we've talked about, because the world just asks and expects that of me.
And at first, when he really is being present, it's going to be uncomfortable for you. Like sometimes, because he's distracted a lot, when he really is present, I'm almost sometimes a little nervous because, wow, I've got his full attention. You almost don't even know what to do with it. But you will get comfortable with it, and it is an amazing feeling. And there is nothing more attractive than a man that is present.
Remember that. Attraction. You don't have to put all the hair gel in and everything like that. Just be present. All right, so most feminine, express how she feels, okay? Obviously, that's important. She needs to show how she feels. We need to understand that. So when properly balanced, mostly at your core, we talk about that core again. Core, mask, mask, mask. So I hate to say it, but very few of us out here, are actually showing our true core most of the time because we've been hurt, okay? And we've wrapped ourselves with a bunch of masks. So to truly get at your core, lower stress levels and be more fulfilled. Okay, when a woman is in a bad mood, it is almost always because she is not feeling loved or supported. It's not because her boss yelled at her. It's not because these other things happened. The example she did during the little skit we did the other week, it's because she's not being supported.
And it might not be by you. It might be by someone else or some other situation, but most likely
But the ones that hurt the most are definitely if it's coming from the person that she cares the most about. Okay, right or wrong, that's just the way that she feels. And you can't blame a person for a feeling, okay, because it's just what it is. It's almost like a knee-jerk reaction. So a good question is, hun, how can I make you feel more loved or supported right now? And then be willing to hear the answer.
You actually said that yesterday. That was good. You
I
said
did.
that yesterday.
Hun is our thing. So if you don't use that term, you could use Pooh Bear, or you could do something else, that's fine. Hun is ours. Okay? You don't have to steal our names, okay? But that's important, and really be willing to hear the answer, okay? Practice expressing anger in healthy ways. Who here has ever expressed anger in unhealthy ways? I don't mind you sharing. I have. And then it's like,
He threw a checkbook at me one time.
You guys already hear this story? You've probably heard this story, right?
Well, no. That's the most violent thing he's ever done to me, so that's why I always tease him about it.
It didn't even have the outer wrapper on it, and I threw it at her, but because it came close to her, she said I threw it.
Well, you always said you threw it to me, so now you're admitting the truth, see?
It is so... This is on film now. I'm going to be called up on the carpet.
I was wondering when I was going to sneak that in there. Oh, that's true.
Throw more, right?
I love it. Thank you,
It was a
Brian.
blank check. Come on. That was actually a gift. Come on. I'm going to twist that now. I threw a blank check at you. All right, so practice at healthy ways, not through raising your voice. At first it's hard. You're going to raise your voice. But then make note of it that, wow, I'm louder than I should be, and then just back off a little bit. But in a firm and confident manner. You can still stick up for what you believe in. You don't have to raise your voice. It's just not necessary. So express it through, physical exertion. Go lift weights or something like that. That's probably a better way. But definitely don't ever have physical exertion towards them. When a man needs to be empty, he often reaches for sports, competition, war movies, alcohol, unhealthy way of doing it. Cars, sexual intimacy, also unhealthy. How often do we hear of someone racing down the road at 100 miles an hour, some teenager or even adult, and kills himself, or they're drunk driving? In many cases, they're running away from their fears and their hurts and their upsets, because that's what our culture and society is developing in us, and it's this uncertainty that actually occurs. Okay, all of this in hopes of emptying his stress and tension for even a moment. So there are healthier ways than others.
Okay.
So the emotional masks. Oh, I love this part.
All right,
Can I do this?
We're finishing up, I promise. Okay, so this really is the crux of everything here. So an emotional mask is basically something we put over our core. So I'm feminine in my core. So when I'm a little girl, okay, and I get hurt from whatever, okay, usually it's an emotional hurt, I put on a masculine mask, because when a woman gets hurt, she puts on a masculine mask, okay? So whatever it is, maybe you were told you were stupid, or you were dumb, or somebody made fun of you at school, okay? Boom. All right, I'm going to protect myself. I'm going to put on a masculine mask. Now, when a man gets hurt, he puts on a feminine mask, okay? So then, next thing you know, you're moving along, and then something else happens, okay? Boom, put on another mask. All right, so now by the time remember that poor masculine lady? That poor woman had so many masks on, you couldn't even really see her real skin, because it was just literally all covered up. Because she had so much emotional pain, that's why she looked so hardened and so hurt and masculine, okay? And that's what happens. So we put mask on, mask on, mask on. We get sexually abused, we get emotionally abused, whatever it is that happens to us through our life. We just keep putting on the layers. And next thing you know, we're so out of touch with our feminine core, and we wonder why, our marriage is falling apart. And the same thing with the men, okay? And it starts when we're very, very young. And now the thing with a mask is it does serve us for a short period of time. It does its job. Okay? If you're getting bullied at school and you're coming home crying all the time and you say, okay, I'm going to toughen up and I put on my masculine mask, yes, it helps you for some time. But guess what? Eventually you have to take that mask off or you're going to start to feel like you're not your real self anymore and you start to feel detached and you feel emotionally empty. Okay? And listening prayer is something that's actually very, very helpful for something like this. A listening prayer would be literally asking God, where is this happening in my life? Where did this come from? And trying to work through that, through prayer. It can be very, very helpful. Now, why don't you just quick talk about this?
So the macho man does not equal masculine. Okay, this is important. Okay, the macho man isn't the one that just comes in and wants to backhand him and just walks in all strutting his stuff and everything like that, thinking he's tough. That is not masculine. Do not confuse the two. That is a person that has he's basically masculine at his core because that's how he was born, but he's got so many layers of feminine masks on top of that with an outer thin layer of masculine, but it's so superficial because that person, the bully, is always the one that's the weakest. Mm-hmm. They're acting in some way because of insecurity and inferiority and whatever else, and it doesn't take much to get through that, but that is truly not at all what masculine is. Please do not confuse the two. Masculine is basically that father coming in and nurturing with his child who is crying and caring for her and providing for the family in that way, but being willing to step out and go out at any hour or any time of the day to provide for them. That's masculine. It's like the love of our Heavenly Father. He would do anything for us, okay? And obviously Christ coming to the cross is a perfect example of giving everything to us, okay? So just understand, macho, totally not masculine.
And I hate to be stereotypical, but just think of you get in the movies, you see the biker guy that's really tough and, he's abusing his wife, drinking all the time. That's the macho man. A lot of people will think, he's really tough and masculine, but he's a wimp. Deep down inside, he is nothing but a wimp because he has all these layers of feminine masks and he's got this little fake, half mask on the outside to sort of look like he's tough. But that's really a macho man and that's a weak man and that's something that women do not respect. Okay, so what happens when you or your spouse deviate from your sexual essence or your core? We become less sexually and physically attracted to our spouse. More tension develops in the marriage, loss of respect, especially toward the husband, okay? Because it's very hard to respect a man that's very, very weak and is not doing what we want him to do. It's just, you lose all of that attraction. And you're more likely to have an extramarital affair in an attempt to fill the void. So how can we cultivate that sexual essence? We have to strip away the masks, number one. And this is the painful and hard thing to do, is to, one, realize that you really do have masks on, okay? And then you have to work at stripping those away by trying to be more in your core. Follow God's plan for your natural family order. Pray for God to strengthen your essence. Hang out with godly masculine men if you're a man, and godly feminine women if you're a woman. Okay? That will really help you to get back into your essence. And know that it takes time. Who saw the movie Fireproof? Okay? How frustrating was it for this guy to try to, his wife became very, very masculine. Okay, that's a good example. Now then she'd go to work and she'd be flirting with this other guy and she'd be all back in her feminine. Okay, but then she'd go home and she'd be like, why are you buying me flowers? Why are you making me dinner? Like crazy. But this guy had to stick through it. So guys, you have to understand, it is not easy. I was a man for a long time. It was really hard to try to become a woman and I still struggle with it. I still find myself going into my masculine more often than I should. okay? But it's a continual thing you have to work on, and you have to support each other because it's really not easy, okay? All right, so your homework for tonight. This is going to be difficult, but you really need to ask yourself, am I really living in my core? Okay? Don't think about your spouse, because right now every one of you is thinking, oh yeah, he definitely has that problem, or she definitely has that problem. Ask yourself, am I really living in my core? Am I doing the best that I can to try to not put on these masks, and am I stripping away these masks as much as possible? It's very, very important. Okay? Literally, this will drastically change your life, but it's not going to if you don't do it. If you don't introspect and really look in, and I highly recommend that you admit to your spouse tonight that you are having a struggle with this. Because what it's going to do is it's going to help you to be more accountable. Honesty is very, very important. And I really recommend that you work on together some kind of a strategy to really help you get out of this, because this will be very, very drastic, make very, very drastic differences. I did not know how good our marriage could be until we started putting this in. Again, we didn't really have major problems. When I look back, I almost feel bad like saying, that it wasn't that good, because we didn't have what most people have in their marriages. We didn't have infidelity. We didn't have, different addictions and things that people were struggling with. It just wasn't as great as it could be. And now, every single year, I swear, it gets better and better, and we're going on 16 years, okay? That's not a lot compared to some of you, but this is our first marriage, okay? This is a good thing, and we want that for every one of you, especially those of you that are newly married. You can start off right. It's very difficult when you have years and decades of all these masks to remove. So if you start now living in your core, it's just going to be so much better. But if you are, 30, 40 years into it, it's not too late. And actually, it's very exciting to have a new start to your marriage. That could be a really great thing. I don't want to embarrass you guys, but I know you guys said you've really changed your marriage lately, and I'm so proud of you guys. Like, that is just fantastic. Let's give them a hand. That's awesome.
You want to say something in a second, too?
And it's never too late. Yes?
I just want to tell you, Ron said the cutest thing going home last week. He says, he looked at me, he says, Lori, you really can teach an old dog new tricks.
Aww.
He was referring to himself, of course,
yes.
right? Not pointing at you.
Amen. Well, we're very happy for you guys, and I think that that's a great example that, it's never too late. So thank you, everyone. Really quick.
I want to make one point. Just realize with this, just kind of like in church when you go on Sunday and you're very rah-rah and everything's great, and it's kind of, the difference between the altar and the door, like there's this change that happens in the outside, scary, unhealthy world. It's the same thing with this, okay? Remember, how did the masks get put there in the first place? When they've been hurt. Remember that. Perfect little beautiful child in their core essence, and the first time they get hurt by a parent or other, mask. And then another one. And then they're flip-flopping because the world wants to bring them back to the way they should be, and then they confuse them more. Those masks are not there because they want them to be there. They are there as a protective mechanism. So realize they are vulnerable. So when you talk about these things, and they're not just quick to say, yeah, I totally have a mask, I'm going to change, and the whole world's different. They may. Okay, that'd be great, and that would be fantastic, but not realistic for everybody. But don't use that as a default, not to admit the truth. But look at them with love and empathy, even if the hard-faced woman with the glasses on there is the one that's looking back at you, or the man that just doesn't look like he's got anything left to give, because they need your assistance. Okay, you married them for a reason, till death do us part, but realize that you can help them through that process by not judging them. You want to. I wanted to judge her and say, yes, you need to change first, then I'll be able to step out and be the... But it's kind of like the two bulls butting heads. Well, guess what? If one of them hits a little bit harder than the other, I don't mean physically, but they're really the more masculine one, the other one will come down. And I have to just give a quick example of this. We have Daisy, our 12-year-old dog. She's this beautiful, wonderful 12-year-old lab, right? And she's just as sweet as can be, as soft and feminine as you could be. And then we have Roxy, the new puppy. She's 12 weeks old. And Roxy, the tough puppy, okay? So she just basically just chowing on Daisy all the time, and Daisy runs away and skirts and slides and twists. We think she's going to break a hip trying to get away from her. But finally today, okay, Roxy's all tough, I'm going to bite your lip again and probably make it bleed. And Daisy just finally gets her jaws out there and just brings her to the ground. And Roxy's all like, I literally have this photo and I will show it to you next week. She's like looking back in like fear there because the masculine in a sense came out in Daisy to say, okay, I'm alpha. And I'm not saying alpha like you're tougher in some way, masculine, male, female. That's not what I'm saying. But when that comes out, it felt good for Daisy, even though she is female, she just needed to come out and do that. And that's the same exact way. When you start to take control back of like who you truly are, then you can start to reveal those deeper layers and then you won't feel as vulnerable. But right now, it's very vulnerable. You're going to feel weak, and so will they. And just realize that. Give them some grace, because that's what we are, okay? Grace-giving people, but realize that, please. It's so important. Don't give up because the first time they don't just bear all. It's not likely to happen.
All right, and if you haven't watched the last 2 weeks, make sure you watch it on YouTube. And just out of curiosity, next weekend's Easter. Who still plans on being here next week? Okay, good. All right, because we're definitely going to be doing it because unfortunately the week after we're going to have to skip because our kids have something at school going on. So, all right, so we will be here next week, so hopefully you will be too. So, awesome. Thank you guys, and have a good evening.
All right, drive safely. If anyone wants to play with the magnets, feel free. It really is hard to separate them.